For a second, I will leave Vue to dive into that proxy thing which is built into JavaScript, which Vue uses. And let's leave the Vue world here and write some vanilla JavaScript. We have a variable message where I say hello. So this is a regular JavaScript variable. It has nothing to do with Vue. Now the interesting thing about JavaScript is that if I now have a new long message, which is my old message plus, let's say, world, I can of course console log that here, and we would see hello world. If I save that, open the console, and reload, we see hello world here. Now that shouldn't be too surprising. But now if we change message thereafter to hello and a couple of exclamation marks, if I console log long message again and I reload, I still get hello world. I don't get all these exclamation marks here. Instead, I just have one exclamation mark after hello. Because JavaScript by default is not reactive. That is really just something which Vue adds for us. JavaScript by default is not reactive. If we have a calculation like we have it here, where we use a variable and we change that variable thereafter, that calculation here is not re-executed. JavaScript doesn't note that message changed and that it was used here. So that is how JavaScript works, and Vue works differently. Vue has a built-in mechanism to be aware when message changed, so that parts of the app that rely on message can be updated. And as mentioned, for that it uses proxies. So let's see how proxies could work. For that, let me remove that, and let's create an object, data, which is just an empty JavaScript object, again, not related to Vue. And let's put the message in here, hello. Now we can wrap this object with a proxy in JavaScript by creating a new proxy. And that is a constructor function built into modern JavaScript. Therefore, make sure you're testing this code in a modern browser like Chrome. Now we can store that proxy in a constant, and this proxy wants the object it should wrap, in this case, data. But it does not just want this. Instead, it wants a second object as a second argument, and that will be an object full of handlers for that wrapped object. Now I'll come back to what that is in a second. Let's first of all create such a handler object here. This handler object can now use certain features. It can set up so-called traps, which proxies support. For example, set traps. You do this by adding a set function here in the handler, and as an argument, you will automatically receive a target, a key, and a value. Now, to understand what this does, let's console log target, key, and value here. And let's now pass this handler object as a second argument to our proxy. Now, I said that the proxy would wrap this object, this data object, the first argument, and indeed it does. So on the proxy, we can indeed access message just as if we would have a message property on the created proxy object. Because actually we will. It wraps this data object. This object has a message, so the proxy also has one. And we can set this to hello with a couple of exclamation marks. Now let's save and reload. And what you should see here is that you get 3 console log messages because we have 3 console logs here. The first one, the target, is essentially the object that was wrapped here. That's just your object that was wrapped. The second one, the key, is the property that you just set a new value to. And the third one, the value, is the value that was set. And that hopefully shows you what a handler does. With that, we can define a setter function, which is triggered whenever a property is set to a new value on this proxy. And then we can find out which property that is, what the new value is, and which original object we wrapped. And we could then use this if we had another property here. Let's say a long message, which initially is hello world. But we want to ensure that long message changes if message changed. Let's say that's our goal. Now, by using a proxy and setting up such a handler with a so-called set trap, we can implement this. We can check if the key we're setting is message. So if we're setting the message property, and if we do, we want to set target long message equal to the new value we assign for message plus world. And thereafter, we also want to make sure that the message property itself is set, so we set target message equal to value. And the interesting thing can now be seen if we console log proxy.long message thereafter here at the end, after setting the message to hello with multiple exclamation marks and after updating our handler here. If we now reload, we see that down there from line 40, we're outputting the long message, which now picks up all those extra exclamation marks. So long message was updated when we set message. So here we built our own reactive system for tracking one property and updating another property when that one property, the message property here, changed. And in a nutshell, and of course with a couple of simplifications, that is what Vue does under the hood. It keeps track of all your data properties here, and whenever such a property changes, it updates the part of your app where that property was used. For example, it knows that it needs to update this paragraph where you're using the message. And it does that by wrapping your properties with proxies so that it has a chance of finding out when you're setting a new value. That is how Vue works. And of course, it has a way more complex way of doing that than I did it down there. And of course, it also has computed properties and watchers which are triggered when a property changes. But that's just the in a nutshell approach, which hopefully gives you an idea of how Vue works under the hood, so that this magic, which Vue adds and which is amazing, is a bit less magic in a positive way.